Imagine our planet moving at 11 million miles a day around the galaxy, and we're rising north above the galactic plane at over 300,000 miles a day. We're going faster than any spaceship has ever traveled. And so what happens is these super sensitive organisms that we are, and many of us are too weak, when we suddenly receive a huge impetus of energy, of cosmic energy, it affects our consciousness tremendously. Tremendously, even these weak changes. So I mentioned this vibration on December 22nd that vibrated through the planet. A storm erupted on Saturn. We see birds dying and species dying all over the planet, which may or may not have to do with that. And we see radical shifts in consciousness, the riots in Tunisia and now in Egypt. So it's kind of like a ripple effect, that's happening. And at the same time, on a much more severe level, stronger magnetic fields coming from cell phone towers and TV towers and high-tension power lines can do a lot to living systems and DNA because they're not harmonic. One of the things I've done in my work on differentials, the hidden harmonic codes of the universe, is identify fields of energy that are way beyond the standard knowledge of frequencies, of standalone frequencies, and understanding that these harmonic values energetically can go way out of balance. A lot of human energy systems go way out of balance, and when they go out of balance, out of harmony, they lose their energy in their magnetic field, their very weak magnetic field, which could contribute to an epidemic of physical depression and physical depressions of energy. In fact, many people whose millivolts that I've measured who are physically depressed, who suffer from chronic depression, and even nervous system disorders like fibromyalgia, they have really low millivolts in their nervous system.
Really?
And we can change that with very, very subtle energy devices. But when you're talking about a pole shift, and you're talking about a huge magnetic energy change in the solar system and the planet, you're talking about a field of energy that has either chaos or harmonic information inside of it. And if it's harmonic information inside of it, there's absolutely no doubt that you can scientifically prove that there is going to be a consciousness shift on this planet, at the very least in 2012. There's no doubt, because we can see it happening. We can see the solar system ringing. We can see all of these changes, happening in the solar system, like the poles on Mars melting and the storms on Jupiter, and now this sudden storm on Saturn. We can see that there is a change in the vibration of the solar system.
David, tell me something. What is the nature of this storm, and what creates it?
The storm on Saturn?
Yes.
Well, everything, see, Einstein says the field is the sole governing agency of the particle matter. Fields of energy dictate what bodies, or from subatomic particles to human bodies to whales and dolphins to dogs and cats to planets. They determine what's going to happen. And so from weather systems to giant storms on Saturn and Jupiter, if you see a sudden change in an energy system, you're going to see a sudden change in an ecosystem to a biological system.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get at is what is the nature of the storm activity?
Well, the nature of the storm activity is a giant swirling. I mean, Saturn is usually, the storms are usually down low. It's a very smooth-looking atmosphere. It's not like Jupiter with all the bubbles and the spots and the really fancy marble-like patterns in it. Saturn is usually a much smoother-looking object to look at. But the storm, you can Google it right now on anybody who's interested. It is massive. It is utterly massive. So there's no doubt that from an energy or field perspective that something has happened, because that was only 2 days after the ringing of Earth like a giant bell. In fact, the storm on Saturn probably started in the same moment, but NASA actually didn't detect it until days later. Cosmologically, because I understand how quantum physicists today say that they've made a great leap in understanding on how information or consciousness, when you think of having a thought, does a thought have any weight to it? Does it have any power? Well, we are little transmitters. We don't have a lot of energy in our field. We have millivolts in our nervous system. We have a magnetic field that can be detected by these super quantum squid detectors. So we really are alive electrically. And we are going to be affected by the new electrical energies in the solar system as our solar system moves through the galaxy. But, do we know that what's going to happen on 2012 is going to be a huge energy shift, and inside of that energy, a new consciousness to bring change? And actually, that's theory number one. And theory number two is it going to be the end of the world because this new energy and information is going to, because if you have a physical pole shift, even, 10-degree sudden pole shift would cause massive earthquakes.
A 10-degree what?
Even a 10-degree physical pole shift that is sudden would cause massive earthquakes. You don't need to have a complete flip of the poles, even though NASA's data suggests the average is about every 300,000 years you're going to get a physical pole shift, a complete pole reversal. And they think the last one was 780,000 years ago. Well, that means we're overdue. And it's not impossible. I mean, they're seeing the Earth's magnetic field is collapsing. It's collapsed 10% since the 19th century. We're now in the 21st century. And so we see that the natural drift rate of the poles has increased from 10 kilometers per year in the 20th century to 40 kilometers per year in the 21st century. So that's a radical change that should duly noted. And it's an early indicator that we might be heading towards a physical pole shift. Anything that's sudden physically isn't good for people who live near coastlines because of giant tsunamis, and the ring of fire where most of the earthquakes occur is commonly in the coastal regions around the planet. So, that wouldn't be good. But if it was more gradual and gentle in that pole shifting process, it wouldn't necessarily destroy, all of life on Earth, and it would be the end of the world. Now, whether we know that the Mayans' calendar of the 5,000 and some odd year cycle that is ending means a pole shift, the Mayans have not been clear about. We know that we are entering a new energy in the galaxy. That is a fact. And if we superimpose our entire solar system onto an atom, and we think of subatomic particles like planets and the nucleus of the atom where the proton and the neutron and the quarks are as the sun, for example, we can see that when electrons jump into higher frequency orbits as they migrate closer to the center of the nucleus, it's the kind of the same thing we're doing now. As we're spinning around the galaxy at 11 million miles a day, we're also entering a higher frequency because we're migrating closer to the center of the galaxy. But in atoms, there are these things called membranes or shells. And they're kind of barriers that when an electron crosses it, you get a sudden radical transformation of the electron, and it becomes lighter and it accelerates much, much faster than it normally travels, and sometimes many times faster than the speed of light. It just disappears from detection equipment. So if that's an indicator on a larger scale, the transformations are sudden, like in 2 Peter in the Bible, in a twinkling of an eye. All of the elements will melt with fervent heat. Everything changes. You get the new heaven and the new earth. So if something like that is coming, there's no doubt that NASA can't see it coming because we're traveling into new space every single day. But what I'm more excited about is the first proposition, because you think of, our new children that are being born into this new energy, this new solar, new cosmic energy. Their DNA is brand new. In fact, my wife and I just had a daughter, Alira, in October of this year, so she's only 3 months old. And when my wife was in labor, the sun would have these 3 super powerful magnetic spots that were, as the sun spins around every 27 days, it comes into this alignment where some of these spots are direct Earth facing. And when magnetic spots are direct Earth facing, they're very, very powerful. And that energy imprints in the DNA of all living things being born in the presence of that. And I tend to think, like a lot of people do, that it's really, there is an energy shift that we're all going to feel because we're all sensitive, but most of us adults who are past 27 years of age, our DNA factory has already told the RNA and the proteins in our body how to build us. And people like Bruce Lipton say that they have data that suggests that consciousness tells energy to tell the DNA what to do. You know, so your blueprint is not, your genes are not your blueprint. Your consciousness is your blueprint, which is your structure for information. So you think of these new children, and they're coming in, and we've done incredible studies here and had amazing experiences with our child and with other children that have these phenomenal abilities. I mean, really, really phenomenal abilities, which we can talk about later. Some actual case examples that are going to blow people's minds, utterly blow people's minds, of what is actually possible. That is where you're going to see the real shift, because who changes the world? It's, some people say, well, it's science and money and politics that changes the world, but who are scientists and who are politicians and who are the architects of the new world? The future children. And this radical shift that we're going through right now, a lot of PhD psychologists and educators are saying is, why are all these new children being born in epidemic numbers, which what we label as ADD, attention deficit disorder? Why don't they like our educational models? Why are they turning it all down and actually dropping out of high school in epidemic numbers? Because these new kids have new information that the cosmos imprinted in their DNA when they were born. And with that new information, they have new ideas. And if we're really honest, as great as our country is, as America is, I mean, all of the greatest inventions of the world started here first, somewhere between here and Europe, most of them. And they're really great inventions, a lot of them. We have not paid enough attention to exploring holistic energy sources for all the technology that we have on the planet, and that is our greatest demise. That is where we're destroying the oceans and the oil spills and all of the toxic waste dumping and nuclear waste dumping in the oceans. We've ignored that one. We know we have the internet, we have all this stuff, but we're just saying, okay, let's just keep making more gadgets and more things that use energy. Let's not focus tremendously on what the real potential is for nuclear fusion and zero-point energy and anti-gravity and these things. So what's shifting is our children are saying, well, we have abilities and we understand things that you don't understand.
Only this time it's true.
And this time it's true, but we're saying, no, you have to be educated the way we were educated. But if you educate the children the way we were educated, they're going to produce the same results we have now. And we've got some good results. We've got brilliant people in this country that are not getting funding for incredible ideas right now. And these kids have abilities to clearly talk with angels and from the other side and get the information we need, not just to talk to our dead grandmother or, which is wonderful, but they can actually have dialogues with the other side so that we can solve these world problems. And we think that's not important. We think, well, we have, we're limited to this idea that in the West, what we did is we got rid of what ancient cultures, and the Mayan cultures is a great example, and Native American cultures, and even Tibetan and Buddhist cultures, and even mystic Christian cultures had, which is the person who was the shaman or the conduit between humanity and the angels and God. And that person could create a dialogue, and these are not just general dialogues. I mean specific dialogues, how to create a new biofuel, how to actually access the zero-point energy field. These are things that are possible in dialogue like that. But in our culture, we removed the shaman. We don't have a shaman. We don't have these conduits in our churches. In our churches, we say, well, same problem. We have stories that are thousands of years old that we adhere to like glue, and if God wants to send us a new message through the church, they won't allow it because they say, well, that's not in the Bible. That's not in the book. You can't do that. Well, if God wanted to broadcast on a television set and say, or an extraterrestrial intelligence, that wouldn't work either. So what is the best television set to broadcast through? is the human consciousness, the human organism. And who are the new children that are coming in, but perfect vessels to receive a message